Thanks everybody for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it. It's nice to just kind of get to know some people in the community. Actually, I just moved here in May, and so I'm still just learning, where the area high schools and everything like that. I live right up the road in Dunmore, so nice to meet everybody. So tonight I wanted to talk to you guys. Actually, it's going to be a little less on the technical side. I'm happy to answer any technical questions or kind of go into what I do at Gentex or my research or any other things like that. But what I was kind of thinking when I thought about this presentation was that you guys might actually benefit from using me as kind of a case study. So I'm 30 years old right now, which means that I've been out of high school for 12 years. And over the past 12 years, I've lived in a whole bunch of different places. I've been in several different STEM careers. I've had several different internships in academia, industry. I worked in business. And I just finished my Ph.D. actually this May. And so I'm going to go through kind of some of my experiences and try to relate them back to you guys. And I encourage you to feel free to interrupt me, ask me questions, and then at some point I'm going to have a bit of an interaction with you guys. I have some props you see up here, and so we'll get to start the conversation. And please let me help you. So if there's any questions you have about my experiences, I would love to answer them. So kind of already told you in general what we're going to talk about. The way this is going to go down is first I'm going to just tell you a bit about me. What are my passions, my research, my experiences. Then I'm going to give you some of my input on STEM as I reflect back on my own career. So what have I learned? What do I think I could relate to you that you can pass on to some of your students that might be interested or don't know they're interested yet in STEM. And then we'll do the group exercise on sports engineering, and then we'll wrap up and have discussion. But if we have discussion before that, we may not need a special discussion. Okay, so my passions. First of all, my passion is my family. So I grew up in upstate New York. I'm not too far from here, about a 3-hour drive. And my immediate family is on the left, and my fiance's immediate family is on the right. He's actually here too, that's Dave. And Dave also is a Ph.D. engineer working at Gentex, so I thought it would be good to bring him along as my helper/accessory for the evening. Thanks, Dave. So, family. I mention this because sometimes people will actually use their family or some experience in their family as a motivation to go into a STEM field. So, say a family member has a terminal illness or cancer or something like that. Sometimes tapping into what people's passions are, which you'll see is a recurring theme of my talk, can really result in some high interest in STEM and really a lot of motivation. My other passions, a lot of them revolve around sport actually, and you may see that in a lot of your students also who are sitting in your class and might rather be on the soccer field or on the football field. So I'm here to tell you I love sport, but I also love science. I've competed in triathlon and trail running. I'm also a yoga teacher, and some of these things I've kind of gotten into throughout the years, so not always was I doing all these things. And last but not least, I enjoy hiking and travel. This is actually my Ph.D. research group. We recently went to the Appalachian Trail and hiked 42 miles, including the approach trail, which is 550 steps-ish. That was fun. Only 2 of us survived, by the way. Dave and I. We made it to the end. But turns out when you take a bunch of PhD researchers, they're not really always good enough to do that. And the last thing is also singing. And I mentioned singing too because singing was one of the reasons I was interested in STEM. When I was in high school, I went to programs not unlike this, but for high school students at the University of Rochester. And one of them that they had was Women in Engineering program. So one week I went there, I was just kind of checking it out, and they had a person who was doing her PhD. First of all, it was a female. She was doing her PhD in sound. and basically trying to understand how different sound frequencies resulted in different feelings, and sound therapy. They're kind of taking more of like a STEM approach to that research. And that got me really excited as a singer because, you know, I would be singing and you can see people reacting to different points in the music and minor versus major key. So, you know, whatever someone's passion is, what I'm trying to say, you can tie it back into a STEM field and you can really stoke that flame. So I'll talk a little bit about my locations, but I'll give you the full spiel. So as I mentioned, I was born near Rochester, New York. I went to university at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and went to grad school in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So as you can see, I'm a northerner, except the past 6 years I've been living in the Bible Belt South, so completely different, but I'm happy to be back in the Northeast. I've also lived at some other locations for shorter durations of time, and that would be in New Jersey, in Cleveland. I lived there for 2 years. I had another internship in Atlanta, and over the past year and a half or so, I've been blessed to be able to have an internship in Germany, working for Adidas, and an academic internship in Geelong, Australia, at Deakin University. So I'll kind of explain how all of that unfolded now. So as I mentioned, Rochester, New York, so the high school I actually went to is called Byron Virgin High School. And background on that high school, it's a small public school. So you hear my background, you might think, oh wow, magnet school or this or that. Small public high school, 99 people in my graduating class. Very rural, more cows than people type of town. And but really had some positive influences in my high school. Actually, my high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Locke, he was a tough cookie and recognized my potential and kind of encouraged me, and also my elder sister, to kind of seek out the local university programs and get engaged in the community, because my high school, you know, didn't have AP classes and didn't have some of these resources. So he kind of acted as my surrogate academic father and encouraged me to go to these things. And my parents were thrilled about this because neither of them had even gone to college. And so, you know, he was a great resource for us. So one of the things that Mr. Locke tuned me into was this program at University of Rochester at the Laboratory for Laser Energetics, which, as a high schooler, I had no idea this even existed, or you know what it was, what engineering was, anything. But I loved physics, I loved chemistry, and this program was accepting high school students to come do just a summer in the lab and just help out. So I applied, I got in, and I spent my summer at the U of R. My sister had also worked there, kind of also ushered in by Mr. Locke. And during that experience, I worked in an optics lab in the materials portion of the lab. So that meant I was working with liquid crystals, I was working with high-tech lab equipment, scanning electron microscopy, things that you really don't have access to in a high school setting, but I was starting to understand what a STEM career might mean. Because of this experience, I sought out engineering schools, and actually I was 50-50 between majoring in voice or majoring in engineering, because I was also pretty passionate about singing as well. And the reason I went to this school was because I could have gone either way. And that's Carnegie Mellon University. So Carnegie Mellon has an excellent CFA, College of Fine Arts program, and also engineering, but I applied to physics and to materials engineering with only just that one summer in a materials lab, and not really getting the full grasp of what materials engineering fully encompassed. But it turned out I really did enjoy that field. But while I was there was a lot of theory, right? It's engineering school, it's hard. You're getting C's, you're getting D's, you're getting A's sometimes, but it's a struggle, and it really wore on me. But every summer, I always tried to get some kind of academic internship to kind of re-ground me in why am I putting myself through this, and what is this going to lead to. And What that resulted in was 3 different internship opportunities. 2 of them were more STEM, and the third one being business. So I worked for Bell Labs for a summer in Murray Hill, New Jersey. That was a pretty awesome experience because there's people that are, tons of scientists that are publishing in Science and Nature, and they're just available all the time for you to have conversations with. While I was there, I worked on silicon nanographs and hydrogels that could be kind of embedded in the nanographs. So the silicon nanographs would be super hydrophobic, meaning that it would completely repel water. But the idea would be with some certain degree of wetting that you would actually get a super hydrophilic response. So this was not really a fully developed applied idea. It was much more on the theory side. And then I went to Georgia Tech, where I worked on UV curable polymer systems that could be used in ACL repair. So completely went from total theory side to totally applied side. Well, it just so happened that I had torn my ACL playing soccer. And when I did that project at Georgia Tech, that was it for me. I was so interested, and the guy I was working for, he did actually a spin-off company based on this. I think it's called MedShape Solutions, and working on these polymers for the knee replacement, and the ACL replacement. So once I finally found this intersection of something that I related to, I myself had screws in my knee that were bothering me every time I played sports, but here I felt like I could directly affect that. That was really interesting. Now that being said, engineering school did get the best of me, and I ended up going to the dark side and working for an internship actually in business. And I say that kind of with a joke because, as engineers, I think we have sometimes a chip on our shoulder about, life is so hard or this or that, but it was actually just as challenging, but in other ways, because I got the opportunity to manage people. And if you think that trying to answer a scientific hypothesis is hard, try managing 16 accounts receivable people who all have lives and health issues and are 20 to 30 years older than you. So that was really grounding experience for me. I actually really enjoyed that internship. So I wasn't quite managing people as I kind of got into yet, but I was doing some other stuff. And so I ended up taking a job at McMaster-Carr for 2 years. And when I was there, I developed all these managerial skills and soft skills that I think actually, sometimes we say STEM, sometimes now we're saying STEAM, right, the arts. Some of the things that I learned in management and soft skills and how you present your data, really very critical. But I must say that during those 2 years, all my lunch conversations were about engineering stuff and ACL repair and what was happening with this company at Georgia Tech and how could I get back into it. And I found out there was a program in Mississippi, of all places, that was sports engineering, a Ph.D. program. And I had never thought that I would be capable of getting a Ph.D. Actually, I related to your story earlier about that. And they had a master's program too, and I thought, well, maybe I can at least get into the master's program, and we'll see there. But got into that program and totally excelled while I was there. Basically, once I got in the door, because I had worked for 2 years, I treated every meeting like it was a business meeting. And I treated every opportunity like it was the last opportunity. So when I met with advisors, I didn't just say, am I going to get to sleep in late and how often are you available? I was asking them, I came to them with a list of projects and I said, look, these are the things I'm passionate about. These are the projects I want to work on. Do you have funding for this? Can you help me get funding for this? I've never written a grant proposal before. And all of the advisors said, no, we don't have money for any of this stuff, except one advisor. And he basically said, he looked at the list and he said, yeah, that's fine. And And I said, what do you mean, yeah, that's fine? And he said, I can tell whatever you do, you know, you're going to make it work. And that was amazing. Excuse me. So I took that and ran with it. And I say took that and ran with it because my research ended up being running shoes. And what I was really passionate about at the time, I was just getting into trail running and triathlon. I had just read the book Born to Run, if anyone's ever heard of that book on minimalist running. And it was a polymer science program that also had elements of kinesiology and biomechanics. So what I really wanted to do was answer the fundamental question, how do running shoes and running shoe material degradation interact with injury in traditional and minimalist shod runners? And shod is, you know, shoed. I know it's kind of jargony. But that was my mission, and the next 6 years of my life was spent chasing that mission. So while I was at Southern Miss, as I said, I kind of knew what I wanted. I had kind of worked in a few different places and realms, and the next thing on my list was I wanted international experience, especially because for sports engineering, there's really only sports engineering in one or two pockets or certain research groups in the States. The rest of the sports engineering is in the UK, in Asia, kind of scattered around the rest of the world. So while I was at Southern, actually both Dave and I applied for so many different opportunities and networked like crazy, just looking for an opportunity to get abroad. And we ended up going to a conference, actually at the United Kingdom. It's the International Sports Engineering Association conference. And we ended up going to that conference. We both presented our work. And while we were there, right after we presented, we were approached by the senior engineer of Adidas World Headquarters, who was in the audience. And he came down and basically immediately offered us positions in Germany. So that was a pretty cool experience. So in the meantime, we had been applying for this research exchange in Australia. We got back from the UK, we were celebrating this opportunity in Germany, and a couple months later we heard back that we also had these opportunities in Australia. So we went from really nothing to everything. And actually I want to point out on the timeline here, this makes it look like, oh, everything happened so smoothly, and okay, this flows into that. There's some 3 dots right here. Okay, so between 2010, when I was completely questioning what am I doing, and I'm going to enter into this new program, I don't even know if I deserve a Ph.D., and then middle of 2014, getting an offer from the guy at Adidas. That just, you don't expect that that's going to happen, but you just keep working at it and keep using the resources around you. At least that's what we found. And that's how we got those opportunities, so pretty awesome. So, after traveling the world, I wanted to come back to good old USA, okay? I want to speak English. I want to be with people that are familiar to me. I want to just, travel for vacation. And as I mentioned, my family's in the Northeast, so that's how I ended up back here at good old Northeast PA at Gentex. So I now work as a senior engineer in tactical optics. I work not on running shoes or overuse injuries, but actually I have very much carried over my skills from my Ph.D. into my current position because I'm working on visors and lenses that are also going to be interacting with soldiers and people. So you really have to consider how is that material going to perform in all these different scenarios that are realistic. Do you guys have any questions about that? Yeah.
What's your take on minimalist running shoes versus, I've heard that the excessive cushioning is what contributes to a lot of injuries. And minimalist is the way to go. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I have a lot of thoughts on my dissertation, I think.
Is the padding needed if you're out running?
So my professional response is it depends. Really though, because there's so much literature now on really both sides. And my personal opinion is, for me, I run in the 5-finger shoes. Actually, these this is my shoe that I run in the trails with, and there's nothing here. But for a lot of other people that I've talked to, like other athletes, I do think it depends, because I think sometimes changing your footwear can have more of an effect than anything else. So if everyone today said, okay, yes, we're all going to be minimalist runners, 50% of you would get hurt in the first 2 weeks. That's just what would happen. So to say which one is better, you have to take into account that temporal component. Any other questions? Okay. You guys will talk soon. Okay. So now that I gave you the whole background and the story, I'm going to try to connect my high school experiences that I reflect on to this whole story that I just explained. Okay, so first one, motivated by passion or need. So I've actually kind of already touched on this in my stories, but I told you a bit about how my singing influenced my STEM. I told you about how running, obviously, influenced my Ph.D. Family, kind of not anyone else in my family, but my own experience tearing my ACL, so still the human component. And actually, I tried to apply to Australia. The first time I tried to apply, I actually wrote a proposal for yoga mats, for very sticky yoga mats, and was rejected, by the way. But so all of these components of things that I was interested in. Oh, and travel, of course. So all of my international experience as well. So I kind of want to turn it around to you guys and ask, what are your students passionate about, or like, do you have any examples, or do you relate to some of these examples that I'm presenting?
We were talking about this before. We teach together at Western Wayne High School, and a lot of our students are outdoorsy. They like to be outside, they like to go hunting. We have an in-house boat tech, so a lot of our students are also into cars and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of the conversation that happens in our classroom revolves around hunting, and it revolves around fixing cars. And like, I've learned just this year a lot of things from the students that they are bringing up, mechanics and like materials that they work with in the shop, and I've never heard of it before. So I feel like definitely their passions, if you could tap into them, you're gonna reach them a little bit more. And I feel like I've been trying to do that over the last couple of years.
Awesome. Do you feel like your students make the connection from like that conversation they're having in the classroom to going into a STEM career?
I think possibly. I think a lot of them, they know they're good at, a lot of them know they're good at science, and a lot of them know that they really aren't. And so they're motivated by, the engineering aspect in the shop and things that are hands-on. It's like we teach a lower level science course.
Mm-hmm.
So those kids are a lot of the industrial arts students, and they're a lot more mechanical than I can ever be. And so I try to express it to them that they are engineering. That's what that's what mechanics is. And
They have a whole hypothesis about why you can distill gas.
yeah,
And what was it, they thought you can get more gas if you continue to distill gas, like things like you don't.
they're coming up with ideas that don't really make sense, but
Make sense at the same time, so like you see like the blood flowing.
Excited that they're thinking about it.
Cool. Do you see these students majoring in STEM majors in college?
A lot of them went into, Lackawanna was recently there with the petroleum and gas school. So a lot of them are looking into that kind of way, environmental.
That's cool. Any other examples or comments?
I'd say I teach those kind of classes, and at our school, North Pocono School District, what we try to have in the shops and technology programs are kind of like a resource for the science programs. that we help with a lot of clubs like Science Olympiad, Junior Academy of Science, engineering, like bridge building projects. And so we kind of teach that in our curriculum in the tech program, but a lot of the science students will come down and use our facility to do the actual hands-on part of it. And the hands-on part really does motivate even the smartest kids in the school, so they all love to just work with their hands as well too.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the motivation. I think they enjoy working with their hands and seeing something, constructed by their own hands, right?
Yeah.
I had a kid building a tractor, and it was like, he talked about it to me for like 15 minutes. I can't tell you one part of a tractor because I have no experience with tractors. It's like, I connected this to this and this to that, and it's gonna run like this, and I'm like the fact that they can like process all that, and I'm still like, as someone who's not very into the engineering side of things,
Sure.
it's interesting to see how like the interest works.
Here's a kind of a question. Do you guys find that sometimes the students who surprise you are really good with the hands-on stuff, maybe aren't getting as good of grades? Like those skills are kind of complementary?
Right.
Definitely. I think that's definitely true. So I think, getting the students in these hands-on scenarios will help them realize that they can excel at the career if they can just make it through school.
Yeah, that's I try to stress that to them.
That's good.
I think the other side is true too. If you take the top students and maybe they're used to just doing everything in theory and let them play with things and get their hands on things, sometimes they'll surprise you too.
I agree. Actually, my roommate and I in grad school were opposites in that way. Like my grades were, I passed, I was okay, but get me in lab and you couldn't stop me kind of thing. And she got all A's, but when she was in lab, she would come home all the time and say, I broke this test tube, I did this, I couldn't synthesize anything today. And over time, it just kind of evened out. Like I got better at studying, and she got better in the lab, so now we're both in our careers, so there's hope for everybody. Okay, the next thing I learned is that these fundamental concepts are a real thing. So when I learned about the electromagnetic spectrum, I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, and then I think we looked at different colors with different gas lights, like that lab. Some of you may be familiar with that lab. And I thought that was cool because I couldn't see certain types of purple, which I thought was very interesting. But then that idea just kind of remained dormant in the back of my head for a little while. And this electromagnetic spectrum has been this recurring, it's just one example, I could give so many, but it's been a recurring theme. I've needed it in pretty much every job I've done except when I worked in business. And even when I worked in business, if I went out to the floor, you still have to think about concepts like frequency, because the frequency that someone's packaging a box or something like that. So these concepts, these fundamental concepts are so critical, but maybe you guys are doing a better job of it now 12 years later, but when I learned about them, that connection of the fundamental concept all the way through to the application, to the why do I care, wasn't there. So yeah, just wanted to comment on that. I don't know if you guys have any counter comments to that. Okay, any electromagnetic spectrum fans in the audience? Right there with you. Okay, but kind of next to that comment is that it's really difficult to predict which ones will be used. So I thought that this was an interesting exercise for me personally, and maybe it'd be interesting for you also, to kind of go through all of the different experiences I mentioned and think about the high school classes that I took and when did I use the fundamental principles of these classes, and not just on a random Tuesday, but when did I really need that biology class? When did I really need that physics class that I took? So one thing that's interesting is as much as my math teacher said, you don't need math all the time. No, just kidding. No, you do need math all the time. But I thought it was interesting how some things, like for example, computer programming, no exposure in high school, no exposure at the U of R. I had to take a class, it was a requirement in college. Well, I've been using it for years now. There was a gap there where I thought, well, I'm never going to use this, and then consistently I've needed that skill over and over again. So I don't know, I just thought this was an interesting exercise, and the yellow tildes are me, kind of. So chemistry, I actually, even though I liked my chemistry teacher, I actually didn't really care that much for chemistry in the beginning, and then over the years, I really grew to like it a lot, and now I'm finally having a reprise of some of the chemistry I learned way back when in high school. So I thought that was just pretty cool to see. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. Role models. So going back to my comment about not really thinking that I could do it, when I was at Georgia Tech, there was a girl that I was working under. She wasn't my advisor, she was just my grad student mentor, and she was getting her Ph.D. And I remember one day I was asking her in lab, like, oh wow, Ph.D., that sounds crazy. And she told me about the practical exams, and she told me that you have to defend in front of a committee, in front of this big group, and it's really scary. And I just told her, like, oh, I'm never going to do that. And actually, I remembered that conversation with her when I applied for my PhD. And that was such an important experience for me because I really saw myself in her. You know, she dressed like me. She was also in sports. She was similar. So I think if you can't necessarily be a mentor for your student in a certain STEM field, you know, finding someone that can be, even if they just meet them at one of these events, can really influence them a lot. And then the last thing about my advice is that the exposure should be frequent, hands-on, and motivated by the passion or need. So we were kind of talking about this at our dinner table over here, that you don't really have access to things like the scanning electron microscope example I gave, but if you can find ways, whether it's through writing grants or through exchange programs, find ways to get that exposure, it's just priceless. I mean, for example, I've had students come in to my lab when I was in grad school working under me, and I put them on a mechanical testing machine, which in some ways is really simple. You just plug in some data, you press go, you walk away, 12 hours later you have results. And if these students had never even been exposed to any kind of mechanical testing, even just the concept of sampling frequency is completely foreign. And this is a fundamental concept, so getting that exposure early is really great. So kind of related to that, I realize that I've talked a lot, so we're running out of time a little bit, but I kind of wanted to pass around some items, or at least put them somewhere. And I want to poll the audience for our last 5 minutes. I want to poll the audience kind of on these subjects. So, what high school subjects or fundamental concepts do you think are needed for this stuff? I just kind of want you to start thinking in that direction. What college majors, besides, you know, obviously my career, and what other STEM careers contribute to the item availability? Yeah.
There's two separate things. No, you guys are doing the right thing. Like, you're not jumping in.
Okay. All right, guys. So hopefully we generated some good discussion about you know, the things that you guys have, and we can obviously continue to have some of these conversations as we move into the last session. But that's pretty much what I have for you guys today. Do you have any more kind of final questions for me? We can always talk offline. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.